Well, I directed Cruise of the Gods, which is probably 10 years ago, with Steve. That's a little known gem that BBC buried over Christmas and never repeated because of the cast that were in it were stellar cast and probably would have cost a fortune. But it was James Corden and Russell Brand, Rob Brydon, Steve, um, and it was just a lovely bunch of people making a really funny film together. And even though the film never did anything, I know Steve loves it, is very fond of it. So he's had me do a couple of little things with him over the years. But last year, when this was being talked about again, Partridge was being talked about again, I was doing Moonboy with Chris O'Dowd over in Ireland. And Steve had agreed to do a sort of small cameo as an Irish fish factory owner. And he was just brilliant in it. We had a few fantastic days, and he was fantastic in the part. And they were talking about it, and a few days later, he asked me to go and meet Armando. And Armando, being the other half of the team, if you like, wanted to be sure that he thought I was the right person, and bizarrely, he did, and it happened. We shot for 2 weeks in Norwich, but by the time we got there, we'd already done a month in London. So we were on the downhill slope, and so there's a real sort of running to the end line thing going on. But Norfolk was great because the rest of the movie was shot pretty much in one room or two, a couple of rooms. So it was great just to be outdoors, to have a sea and the sky. The skies in Norfolk are fantastic. But you realise also going around with Steve how loved he is. They absolutely adore Partridge. I'm not sure everybody in Norfolk would adore Partridge or get it, but a lot of people do. He'll make Norfolk funky. Well, Steve is the best judge of what Alan does and doesn't do, and he's able to tell you how he should and shouldn't be in situations. But Steve's also open to, if you have a suggestion and it makes sense, he'll jump on it. But if he doesn't think it's right, he'll just squash it straight away, because Alan wouldn't do that. Period. Over. Move on. But it meant that at the end of the day, that what's coming out is judged by him, and I think he's a really good judge. For the most part, his instincts are absolutely spot on. He knows when it's good and when it's not. Okay, there's four. I am Bullhorn, I am Siegeface, I am Bass. And Siegeface was the only one that stayed. But there's also a line, I was talking to Rob and Neil about this earlier. There's a line in the trailer that I wish we had not cut. And Armando wanted to get rid of it quite early on. And I'm sure if I'd come back to him near the end and pushed, we might have got it back in. Welcome to big school. It's that line he says outside the door before he goes in. And I think Armando felt it was too self-consciously parodying movies like that where people say that sort of shit, and Bruce Willis says, welcome to big... it was too self-consciously parodying those, so he felt it was a weakness. But so many people are quoting it now since I've seen the trailer.
It's crazy.
Great lost lines of our time. I think we love the buffoon in Alan. I think we love the fact that he will do or say the inappropriate thing. We might have thought about it, but we wouldn't dare say it. And he does. And I think there's great joy in just watching him commit social faux pas one after another. There wasn't that much of a leap, to be honest, and what was very much the same was, at the core, was a bunch of comedy writers and performers, and you're working with them to give them the space to do what they do very well. And I think that's when British TV comedy works at its best, is when it's writer performer driven, and they know what they're doing and they're allowed to get on with it. And stuff's not being directed too much. Do you know what I mean? Stuff's being protected and kept pure.